What's going on my Elite Life family and my Pathfinder tribe? So what we're going to be talking about now on this part of your course of building effective relationships, we are moving on to the growing together phase. So we've looked at growing yourself, we've looked at the honeymoon period and where the kind of key aspects there of actually growing and developing in those two parts of the course. And now we're looking at growing together. This is when the relationship is confirmed as either a friendship or a lifelong partner. There are things you need to do, and rule one, you've all heard it before, date night. Yep, even if it's just a friendship, find that time to spend with those people. Now, everything else that goes on in your life, and this is more linked and more akin to relationships like lifelong partners, but what normally happens with any type of relationship, so you have the bond between people. When there's a relationship, then there is this kind of connectivity between the two of you, but that does not stop your stresses. That does not stop their individual stresses. And because you're an interconnection, guess what you're now going to share as well? This is why you're going to share interconnected stresses as well. And normally it's the kind of strains and strains that you go through and the types of behaviours that influences within yourself, the strains they go through and the influences that connects with themselves. And because you are linked, these have effect on the other person, be it friendship or significant other. Normally people see the two relationships as different. And this is the reason why people use friendships a lot better than what they use partners. Friendships, they see these people as potential people who are going to get them out of this. Because sometimes you're a little bit timid of what you tell the other person because you don't really tell them everything. Normally with a life partner, boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife, whoever it is, you share everything, the intimate details, and the more you know about a person, the more you know about their strains and their stresses. And the more you know about their strains and their stresses, the more that you have an insight on their behaviours and then how you're affected by those behaviours. This is the reason why on every single stage of this, you need to always work on yourself. When you move on with building effective relationships, from like building yourself, the honeymoon period, now we're in this stage of growing together, it doesn't mean you stop the techniques that you developed and built in that foundation when you was in the honeymoon period. And it definitely doesn't mean you stop on your own individual game plan so you can keep progressing as an individual. But what normally happens here, the power of date night does something. It allows you to see further than the strains and the stresses, because human beings are very, very complicated individuals, if you haven't already come to realise that. We make things more complicated than what they are. We are very, very good at building up a story based on the information that we know about a situation, but the story that we normally come up with is based on irrational evidence. So we have a little bit of evidence that points in one direction, then we say, oh yeah, but what about if this happens? And we spend more time on the illogical fantasy, because we kind of like buy into this concept, if I prepare myself for the worst, the best can only happen. But that does mean you are generally diving into a ball pit of negativity, which then causes all the strains and stresses, especially if you start creating an outcome that you don't want. That thought process becomes a reality in itself. You start feeling what that reality could mean. So what date night does, if you notice, the interconnectivity between the two of you just join you. And it joins you at your most corest belief and feelings of what you saw in the person when you was building yourself and when you was going through the honeymoon period. This builds this interconnectivity. The strains and stresses just come through everyday life. Now, what you're doing with building yourself still, you're going to try and limit, whilst you're with this connection, you're trying to limit the strains and stresses that go on in your life. Because believe it or not, you're always going to have strains and stresses because of the adaptation that you're going through. And what I mean by that is when you was on your own, you only had yourself to consider. So you could put in a 100% game plan that only was really yourself, you, and yourself. Yeah? But now you've got two people, that game plan just has to become like broader. And that is one of the other reasons why we looked at the kind of pedestaling stage about being able to step outside, stretch or come outside your comfort zone and make your comfort zone bigger. Because when you get to this point, when you've got multiple people in your life, you're going to have to know how to engage with other people that affects you, and then your actions affect them, and getting that good balance. It's the reason why you still need to have a focus on your individual life as an individual, because what you're still trying to do is you're still trying to take control of as many stresses as you can, so you don't bring, say, like undue stress to the other person that affects the relationship. You might be able to, if you do this correctly, you'll be able to bring the stresses and strains with you so you can talk to the other person and come to a solution. But you still need to have that presence as an individual to know what you need help with and what you can bring to the other person for that help. But say you do this, so you have your individual plan, you try and numb down your own stresses. Say the other person does the same. Maybe they're on the same path as you, you've told them this kind of stuff that can help and they've really listened, or they just were one of those people that wanted to do it for themselves. You're still going to have the joint stresses, because this is the newness. It's now this interconnectivity, so you're going to have joint stresses, and the way that you get rid of these joint stresses is by simply stepping out of them. This is where date night comes in. Do something that reminds you of your friendship, of your partnership, of the reasons why you started this friendship or you started this partnership. Because guess what? The more times you do this, you step outside it for date night, and the more time you actually see the person instead of the situations, you realise something. One, some of these probably don't really exist. Just by spending that time with each other. Two, the things that do exist, you might be able to have a better understanding as an individual. Because I'm not saying go on date night and talk about these stresses. I'm talking about leave them behind and really reconnect with the individual as a person. Once you've done this, you get reminded that this is the person that you want to have in your life, be it as a friend or as a life partner. Once you've re-established that relationship, and I'm not talking about re-establishing it when it's at the point of breaking down, I'm talking about reaffirming it as often as you can. Friends, we normally do this quite a lot because we try and have active social lives. With partners, it becomes harder, in my personal opinion. Some people might think it's easier. I'm not saying I'm right, you're wrong, or you're right and I'm wrong. It's just my perception of it, my frame of reference. But what this connection does, it shows you the person again. It shows you the person going, you know what, when we get back to our life together, you're someone I want to go, not that I want to go through these stresses with, but you are someone I know I can. I'm happy that you're by my side whilst I go through these stresses, and I have the perfect partner to demolish these stresses together. And this is what happened. This is what you need to do. This is what date night's all about. This is the power of date night. So get away from these stresses and strains that you have together. Make sure you've got your individual plan to make sure you're dealing with your own stresses and strains as well that you bring into the other person's life. Be aware of what the other person's going through. So if they are bringing stresses and strains to your life and it's affecting you, you can communicate better with this person to try and alleviate some of that if they need that help, but you can potentially see it happening and you can put in another game plan for yourself to actually protect yourself and know that this person's only venting and they're not meaning to victimise you, but then you can have proper conversations along the way to allow to show this person what they're potentially doing. But be prepared for the other person to do it to you just in case you get wayward. Yeah, you get lost yourself and you start doing things that you're not aware of. Allow the other person to bring it to you and become aware. But get out the stresses and strains and get into a situation where you reconnect with that person. Be it on a weekly basis, a 2 weekly basis, but as many times you can, because connections and love beat disconnection and hatred. Connect with the people that you want in your life and love them, because you will feel that love. Those connections will rebuild and will help you destroy any disconnection that might be happening because of the joint stresses and strains. And also anything that your individual stresses and strains might cause with that disconnection. Reconnecting with the individual as a person will help reconnect them and stop the disconnection. Feeling love for that person again. Well, if you love that person, you can't hate them. If you love that person, you can't not love them. There's many different levels of love, but reconnecting, working on this connectivity that you have, seeing your friends, seeing your partner, even if it's kind of like you've got a partner, some of the stresses and strains, house, mortgage, children, give yourself a time to get away from that, not to a point where you say, I resent the life I have with you and this is what I want in this moment. You turn around and go, this is what I have with you. This is our base. This is our foundation, which means we're strong enough to handle all of that. And I promise you, 5 minutes of reconnecting can undo days worth of tension. Knowing what your foundation is can make you build a stronger house on top of it, because you trust the foundation, but you need to go revisit the foundations before you do any more building or any maintenance work. So often as you can, reconnect with those people. Know what your foundation is, because you look at your journey better. Power of date night. Get it in as many times as you can. Go see your friends. Go have adventures with your friends. Go have adventures with your significant other and reconnect. Get away from the stresses and strains of life, because it's not that type of, it's not sitting down and having potentially a challenging conversation or a heated conversation with them. It's not a conversation about this is what I'm going through, help. It's not that type of conversation. It's not that type of time together. This is date night. This is about revisiting that foundation that made you fall in love with your friend or made you fall in love with your partner. Date night, the power of it. Get away from your stresses and strains and revisit your foundation. And if it needs a little bit more cement, put a little bit more cement into it. If you want to, it's there and the possibilities are there. And like I said, 5 minutes of reconnecting can undo days worth of disconnection. And also makes it harder for disconnection to come back. People, date night, get them in, schedule them in, get them into your life, reconnect, revisit your foundations. See you on your next video, folks.